So what's IMaR? I suppose we've been dealing with RFID, as I said, for an awful long time. And Enterprise Ireland are after giving us 1.2 million over 5 years to hire 4 engineers, I suppose, or business development, as Alton is out in our stand, to go and to help companies to implement RFID, or at least find out whether RFID is something you should be looking at. And if it's not, that's fine too. We're under no illusion, we're not trying to sell anything. But we are interested in promoting RFID, training people about RFID, and we know about RFID. So if you have a particular use case, then we're not the worst place to come to be honest, because we're not a salesperson. And the problem with salespeople, I suppose, in some ways, and I know I'm at an event where people are trying to sell, is that they're trying to sell things. So obviously they're always going to be interested in their particular technology. So for us, we're looking to solve problems. So if you've got particular problems, either be it in your supply chain, in tracking your RTIs, or losing them, or as was mentioned earlier, the interesting things that Burberry are doing with RFID, then we understand that, and we know how it works, and at least we can have the conversation, and then let's see where it goes from there. I'm going to mention the M. I'm not the mechatronics person. Mechatronics is mechanical and electronic engineering. It's a word for that area, and that helps us as well, I suppose, because particularly RFID is quite often used in areas where automation is possibly required. And so where automation is required, there may be robots, there may be movable gates, there may be something as simple as a green and red stoplight that says that these two products shouldn't leave the building together or should leave the building together. So that's where the mechatronics comes in, because RFID is just one item of a system, and that system can include tags, much the same as barcodes. It can include hardware such as the RFID readers, be they handheld or mounted readers, but it also includes things like software. And interestingly enough for me as well, because my background, we'll come down in a second, but essentially I'm a mathematician, so you might say, what am I doing here? But RFID for me is a data collection tool, because once you have RFID on your product, then you have generally got visibility of where things are, and you have visibility that you don't already have. So that does two things. I mean, yes, it allows you to find your RTI if your RTI goes missing, hopefully, but it also gets you to get visibility into the process that allows the RTI to get lost in the first place, and maybe that's not the most efficient process. So when you have that data, beyond the initial case of trying to find the RTI that's costing you X amount of money when it gets lost, you might also get to look at your process and your supply chain, and the supply chain of maybe some of the other people within your organization, and then you're able to make other decisions that also save you money. So for me, the real interest, I suppose, at the end of the day, assuming that the technology works, is the numbers that come out of that. So I've been working in RFID since 2003, I guess, when RFID was, I suppose, the hype-driven technology, and it was driven by retail. Way back then, the likes of Walmart, for example, had RFID mandates where they went, first of all, to their first 100 top suppliers and mandated them to put RFID tags on every pallet that they were going to sell to Walmart. And they were claiming astronomical ROI on this use case. What was interesting though is that when you looked slightly below the surface, because the likes of Metro, for example, in Germany tried to reproduce the same ROI levels that Walmart were claiming, Tesco, all the big retailers, I guess, looked at this whole slap and ship type scenario way back then. They weren't able to reproduce the same numbers. And part of the reason was that Walmart essentially weren't even using barcodes. So what they were starting from was nothing. They had no visibility. And obviously once they had visibility, then they were getting these massive changes in their supply chain and massive returns. Obviously the European retailers were at a more advanced stage in terms of using other auto ID technologies, so they didn't have as far to go, and RFID was seen, I suppose, in the European retail capacity at pallet tracking as not really being as valuable maybe as what was being touted. So RFID left a bad taste in a number of people's mouths, I guess, and particularly retailers at that time, for a number of other reasons as well. RFID is an old technology. People sort of think that it's a new technology, but it's actually around since the Second World War. And it's in your key fob, it's in your ski pass if you go skiing, it's now in your contactless payment systems. It's around. You're using it whether you think you are or not. It's actually now in a lot of your mobile phones as well with NFC, which is also RFID. But at the beginning, I think people were quite afraid because there was claims of being able to read up to 100 meters and satellites reading you from space and these wonderful things. And if you had a big enough battery and a big enough tag, I suppose it was technically possible, but it's like the story of the guy with the sports watch and the 2 suitcases years ago, which was the batteries he was carrying around with him. So it blew out of all proportion. The technology wasn't as advanced as people were claiming, and it went into a lull. And I suppose that happens with a lot of new technologies, or I suppose technologies that become quite popular overnight. So things slightly dipped, but certainly in the last 2 years, maybe even more, you're not hearing very much about RFID, possibly, but there's a huge number of real implementations now. And I suppose Marks and Spencer's are the big one in retail at the moment, because we're doing work directly with them. In terms of they've tagged all their apparel, or clothes as we like to call it over here, I suppose, but the big use case in the States is the apparel, and of course Marks and Spencer's weren't the first, but certainly they're the ones that have taken it to the next level. But in discussions with them now, it's not just clothes they're tagging. They're going to be tagging food, they're going to be tagging other perishable items, and essentially the idea is very shortly to be tagging every item in their suite of products, which is an incredible suite of products, and right across all of their stores, be they in Asia or the UK or Europe or wherever. So Marks and Spencer's, along with Avery Dennison, who are their tag partner, are very much buying into this RFID, and they're not doing it because it's cool or it's new. They're doing it because it's saving them money. This is essentially what's happening. They have visibility of their supply chain, and their supply chain is complicated. I mean, there's no doubt about it that their supply chain is hugely complicated. They source products from all over the world, different factories in different places, and they've got it to work in that really complex supply chain. So it is possible. Obviously, there's other benefits to them, like I guess the Burberry store, that they're making real advances in terms of increasing the user experience using RFID. But that's going to normally happen in the higher level, well, at the moment anyway, in the higher level goods. Maybe not at the lower level, €3 item or €4 item, but certainly if you're talking about a Burberry coat or hat or handbag, as was mentioned this morning, there's significant investments. So putting a tag in it and writing software that shows a video is worth it in that scenario. It may not be worth it in all scenarios. But what you find with RFID is that when you implement it, for one particular use case, once it's there and once you have the infrastructure in place, oftentimes what happens is that there's add-on. And I suppose guys like me trying to upsell to the next new technology, new thing, it's the initial that investment that's the big thing. How's it different in barcode? Well, barcode, I guess, has served retail particularly very well. But it was interesting, we were at an event in London during the week, RFID in Europe event, and we had James Stafford from Avery, and James was with Marks and Spencer's and then moved over to Avery, but was at the very beginning of barcode. And it was interesting that he was discussing that it took 30 years for barcode to really take off, and you from the very beginning, because people weren't sure about it, weren't sure what benefits it was going to give them, and now you just would not make a product without putting a barcode on it. And I guess retail is large. It takes time to change. I think people need to see others do things and then follow. And so it's different from barcode because you don't need line of sight. This is probably the biggest one, and there's also you can read multiple items simultaneously. So it's interesting talking to Cahill outside, and this is one just not from retail, but even in retail, a particular retailer that was able to get through the recession, a Spanish one, a clothes retailer, we mentioned names, but they also tagged all of their items. but they were able to do nightly stock takes, right? Just basically by walking around the store with a handheld RFID scanner that took, I think, about 30 minutes to do full stock take of the store. And this was something obviously that they couldn't do on a nightly basis, but what it meant is that they were straight away aware of what they didn't have in stock. There was no out of stock scenarios. If they had too much stock, they could move it to stores that didn't have stock, so they had visibility, and they used that very, very well. There's new technology now where you can replace things not the size of the air conditioning unit, but you know, the tiles, the ceiling tiles. You can now buy RFID antenna that sits in the tiles and can cover things like 12 meters squared, right? And so basically, continually, you can read what's in that 12 meters squared. You don't need a person with a handheld or a reader to go and read the tags. And they're huge advances, you know. They just look like a, you know, just like a tile. So there are things happening in RFID, and it's a continually evolving environment. But the bottom line is, you know, these are the benefits you can get. Also, each tag is uniquely identifiable. Okay, so you don't find out that you have, you know, if it's a size 12 Levi jeans, you know which one it is that was sold. Not that there's, you know, 10 of size 10 and true as you would with a barcode. Now maybe in terms of Levi's that doesn't really matter, but in some items certainly you want to be able to track items individually and to see what moves. You know, in some cases you can have readers on the shelves, so you know that the third one down sold and the first one didn't, and so on. So there's lots of insight that RFID can give you. It's used in a wide area of areas. Retail is the big one at the moment, to be honest. It's really driving the RFID business, and for the first time probably since 10 years, RFID companies are making money. So the tag manufacturers are making money. The likes of Motorola and Zebra that are out here with their, you know, handheld scanners and other types of readers, and the likes of Zebra with their RFID tag printers, they're making money. So, but retail is the big one here that's actually driving that. So if you're somebody like Marks and Spencer's and they're selling so many tags, or using so many tags, then that has a big impact on a business. So what happens is, I guess, when Marks and Spencer's are doing, there's others following. Embedded RFID, you'll all be familiar with lots of these things. If you have kids of a certain age, you'll be aware of this game down here, and you put different characters onto it. There's an RFID embedded in the character, so it knows which character it is that goes on. It changes the character in the game they're playing. So this hooks into a Nintendo or whatever, Wii, sorry. So we've got them all, so I wasn't sure which one it was. And they're embedded in shoes. Tires, for example, we've just done a project with a company based in Ennis. We've got the antennas from VisionID that are NASCAR reader antennas, so it's a really cool project. But basically what's happening in this, the big use case here is that if you've got a bus company, so for example CIE, they don't buy the tires anymore, they lease them. Okay, so you might say, how do you lease tires? Well, what happens is the company you lease the tires from are responsible for the state of the tires. So they need to know how many miles each tire is doing, what state it's in, and you do that by, you know, next time they drive into the garage, for example, you've got RFID readers on the ground, it reads what tires are on those, it's automatically able to say that those tires need to be checked in maintenance. You can get sensors as well that will tell you the depth of rubber, but that's not what we're looking at. But so they know that that bus has to go to that garage to get the tires replaced. So the responsibility is taken away from the likes of Bus Air. You know, it's no longer a paper-based, it's now technology-based. It's a challenge because one of the things about RFID is if there's lots of metal around, it's can have problems, and there's lots of metal in a tire. So that's an interesting technical challenge. So what's IMaR? Well, IMaR is an evolution of research at IT Tralee. We've had a number of names and a number of systems. We started off with the WMRG, Wireless Mobility Research Group. We joined up with MIT, or a group within MIT, that's the one in Massachusetts as opposed to Mayo that somebody said to me at one stage. To create SIDS, which I won't even go into what that was, and then SIMS is another research group which was looking at the mechatronics area. So what we did was we came together, we applied as part of an EI process that actually was just launched yesterday in Thomond Park. and we were funded. So, I mean, we went in as part of a process where there was 28 new centres looking for funding. We were one of 2 that got funded. So that shows you, I guess, that what we do well, but also it's in an area that's required. There's no doubt there is business in RFID. So what do we get out of it? Well, my interest is promoting RFID. So we promote RFID, we'll demonstrate RFID for you. If you have a use case, we'll test it. If you're not sure what RFID is, we'll train you or your staff. And also, as I mentioned, we've got the data analytics. What we're not looking to do is we're not looking to sell you equipment. So if we go and we demonstrate RFID to you, we set up a use case and we test it and it works, using our equipment, by the way. And then you go, well, you know what, I want to implement this. Well, then you talk to VisionID or you talk to other people in the RFID space, or Motorola or Zebra, and you take it further. Yes, we'll help you in that regard, but that's not what we're looking to do. We're not looking to sell you anything. And I guess that means that I suppose we are looking at it from a different perspective, and we want to make sure that it works, because if we sell you something, so to speak, or tell you something that's not true, then you're going to tell somebody else. So we have 20 full-time, or 20 staff, that's between full-time and part-time. I guess about 15 of them are full-time and 5 part-time, and we hope to build on that as we go. I'm not going to spend too much time on the mechatronics side, because I know that Peter will be wanting me to be quiet shortly. But we have the benefit also in that Enterprise Ireland are funding us. Depending on the size of your company, we have different funding mechanisms that we can go back to them for you. So yes, we do direct funded as well. But we have things like innovation vouchers. If you're a relatively small company, and by that I mean less than 50 employees, less than 10 million turnover, 3 times a year, Enterprise Ireland advertise for these things called innovation vouchers. They're a really low, I suppose, input application process, very little to them. You just have to have a problem, a use case, and we help you with the process, and you're almost guaranteed to get it. What it does mean is that you have to be a limited company and you have to pay the VAT on the work. But what it allows is it's a no-cost access to expertise, not just in our centre, but in lots of others as well. If you're looking at something much bigger, well then you've got this Innovation Partnership Programme, which is a collaborative effort between the company and the research group. And essentially, you're looking at up to 75% funded by Enterprise Ireland, depending on the company type and size, and the project type. The 9 grand feasibility is sometimes a stepping stone to the bigger one. And we're doing a project here with Vistacon in a water management space using similar technology, but you know, that's the sort of the scale of these things. And what they allow you to do is basically we hire staff to work on a project for you and using our expertise. Then you go up to the EU projects, Horizon 2020, 70 billion budget, everybody wants to be part of it. And you know, if that's something that you're interested in, you know, absolutely we'll talk, but that's at the end of a longer conversation. And there's others, there's enterprise partnership schemes, there's a number of other mechanisms, but you know, we don't do things just to get the funding, we do things because somebody's got a problem, we want to solve it, our technology might be one of the things that will work there, and then we alleviate some of the costs through getting funding in these cases. So very quickly, I also mentioned in here that RFID in Europe, and RFID in Europe started off as what was called a thematic network, a funded project that the Commission put together. Now funded has a strong term, but it was a 3-year project and each of the partners got €12,000. So it wasn't exactly a huge money-making project, but what it was particularly good at allowing all of the partners to find out what was happening in the space in the other countries. Ireland is a slow mover in this space, there's no doubt about it. Germany is probably the #1 in terms of implementing RFID, no doubt about that. Other Central European countries like France, etc. are also quite active, and the UK has some, but Ireland has traditionally been a little bit slow. That's certainly changed. I mean, there's a lot of activity going on now, and it's really encouraging. So we dived into this. I mean, it was a case really of trying to get end users involved. The problem with RFID events in general, and I suppose it's like any technology show, is a lot of the time, and not this one to be honest, and I'm really happy about that because you know, we're getting to meet potential end users, and that's really where we want to spend our time. I was at an RFID event in London on Wednesday, and and we co-located with RFID Journal, and there was some fabulous technology. But it was all technologists that were at it, so everybody was walking around telling each other how great their technology was. But you know, that's not where you want to be. I mean, that's not where problems get solved, and it's not where you get a real view of where the potential is. So these sort of events where there's end users with real problems that can be solved is where business is done, I suppose. So we got quite involved in this. To the point that I've been chair of the management board since March 2011. I expect that by March 2014 I'll no longer be chair, hopefully, because it's quite a time-consuming activity for something that is at this stage a voluntary activity. It's no longer a funded activity, but it's a very important group because we do get to find out what's going on across Europe. So, you know, if you have a particular use case, the chances are that it's not fresh, new, that nobody's thought about it. Somebody's done it somewhere else, you know, and we can find that out. We have a management board made out of those people, and there's people from Stefan Peak, who's the RFID solutions person from Motorola, and people from Greek and France. The two people from France are from Sen RFID, massive RFID centre in France, and we do get access to all of their expertise as well. Importantly, I suppose, we have worked with Marks & Spencer's and Avery directly on this RFID and use site, and it's something that you might give a look at if you have, you know, an idea of what RFID is but not entirely sure, because it's a non-technology site, okay? Because Marks & Spencer's came to us and they said, well, we put RFID tags on our products. Now, under EU law, they are required to place a logo, a sign, somewhere which says, you know, RFID here, something like the, you know, the T sign for the hearing aids and so on. But essentially, it's going to be a sign, and that's agreed. It has to go there. Now, they were, I guess, concerned that when people will come into their stores, they'll see this new sign with, and it has waves coming out of it. I mean, which is, you know, obviously going to spook some people. But what they wanted was, they wanted something that these consumers, interested consumers, could gain access to, even in the store, using their mobile, that would give them the right message about RFID. Because there's a real danger that obviously they go in, they look up RFID, they find somebody, you know, from 10 years ago who put an RFID tag in their hand to go to a nightclub in Barcelona, which actually did happen. I mean, unbelievable. And instead of the strap or the stamp on your hand, you know, they embedded an RFID that cost €400 to take out. So I was at the show actually where this went on. It was ridiculous. So there was a lot of things that happened that shouldn't have happened. But if they find that, they're going to be really scared about RFID. And there's no need to be scared about RFID. So we've set up this site, funded initially by Marks & Spencer's and Avery. They're looking for other retailers to come on board. And they want this to be the de facto standard, or standard location for consumers to come to find out about RFID and to demystify it, just in case you know, the wrong message gets out. So it's a very accessible site. The stock images are from when it wasn't a live site, but it's now a live site, now exists. It's using non-technical terms to introduce RFID to people. And I think if you've got you know, an interest, it's very worthwhile going to. So I'm over time. My apologies to Peter. Alton is going to be here for the rest of today. He's also here tomorrow. He's out at our stand. I'm going to be here till approximately 2:30, and then I have to make my way back to Kerry. But these are the contact details of the staff. I'm happy to chat with anybody over lunch who's interested. So thank you very much for your time. All right.